Stories at Work.
Hi, this is Stories at Work. Today we're breaking down a dramatized and fictional story from the world of manufacturing ops and plant safety. I'm not the kind of ops guy who thinks he's the hero. I'm the guy who shows up before dawn, walks the floor with a coffee that's already gone cold, and makes sure nobody loses a hand because someone wanted to save time. I've been in plants long enough to know the difference between speed and reckless, and I've watched people confuse the two when a deadline gets loud. My name's Calder Vance. I ran operations coordination on the manufacturing side of a mid-sized industrial plant outside Ravenport. Not a glamorous job, not a political one, just the work that keeps steel moving and people alive. Which is why I didn't take it personally at first when the new CEO started treating ops like a punchline. His name was Laur Kestrel. 28. Came in after a funding round and a board shakeup, wearing that polished confidence people mistake for competence. He had the right haircut, the right watch, the right vocabulary, throughput, velocity, execution, and he had a habit of saying my plant, like the building owed him loyalty. On his first walkthrough, he didn't ask about safety metrics or downtime causes. He asked why the permit board looked so complicated. I told him calmly, because the board is where complicated mistakes die. He laughed like I'd told a joke. 2 days later, he held a quick all-hands on the floor, right between lines 2 and 3, so everyone had to stop what they were doing and stare at him. He brought 2 analysts and our plant director, Mara Densley, who looked like she'd rather be anywhere else. Lear didn't waste time. He pointed at the ops station, the binders, the checklists, the lockboxes, and he said, "This is why plants like this move slow. Ops loves paperwork more than production." A couple people chuckled, the nervous kind of laugh you do when the person with power is watching you. Then he turned right to me, in front of my team. "Calder, right? You're the one who signs off on all these permits?" I nodded. Ops signs off, maintenance validates, safety audits. It's shared control. He made a face like the words tasted bad. Shared control is another way to say nobody's accountable. I could feel the crew behind me stiffen. The operators on line 3 didn't like being used as props. They cared about one thing: run clean, go home whole. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't try to win a room. I just said, accountability is why the permits exist. Lear smiled like he'd been waiting for that line. So here's what we're going to do. Starting today, we simplify. We're going to empower the floor. If my supervisors say a change is needed, we do it. We don't stall production because someone in ops wants to feel important. He said it like it was inspirational, like he was saving us from ourselves. Mara's eyes flicked toward me for half a second, quick, warning, helpless. I knew that look. It meant he's going to push this through, and you're going to be the one who has to catch the fallout. After the meeting, I didn't storm off. I went back to the permit board and checked the schedule for the week like I always did. Line 3 had a tooling change coming, nothing exotic, but it required maintenance work inside a guarded zone, close to a pneumatic feed system. The kind of thing where you either do it with discipline, or you end up with an incident report and a silence that lasts for months. My maintenance lead, Huxley Roan, came over with his tablet. "You okay?" he asked. "I'm fine," I said. "But we're going to document everything the same as always." He snorted. "He just announced we're not." "That's what he announced," I said. "That's not what the equipment requires." Huxley leaned closer. He's got the supervisors eating out of his hand. I heard him tell Jace Marin, Line 3 supervisor, that if he hits targets, he'll be fast-tracked. That made my stomach tighten. Because Jace wasn't stupid. He wasn't evil either. But he was ambitious in the way that makes people pretend risk is theoretical, right up until it isn't. I walked the floor again that afternoon, not because I was afraid, but because I was listening. You can tell when a plant's mood changes. People start talking in shorter sentences. They stop asking questions out loud. They start doing favors for the wrong reasons. At the end of shift, I found Mara in her office. Door half closed, lights dim. She looked tired in a way I hadn't seen before the new CEO arrived. "Calder," she said before I could speak, "I need you to keep your head down." I didn't sit. "He's going to hurt somebody." Her jaw tightened. "He thinks safety is branding, and the board thinks he's decisive." "So what do we do?" I asked. Mara exhaled, slow. "We do our jobs, quietly, and we protect the plant the only way we can, by making sure the process is clean enough that if something happens, the truth is undeniable." That's when I understood the game. Lear wasn't attacking me personally. He was attacking the idea that systems should have friction, that rules should slow you down when you're about to do something dumb. And friction is exactly what keeps Line 3 from becoming a headline. I went home that night and didn't sleep much. Not because I was spiraling, but because I kept running the same thought through my head over and over. There are a lot of rules in a plant, but there's only one rule that can stop a line instantly without anyone's permission. And if Leor forced the wrong shortcut, I wouldn't have to argue with him at all. I'd just have to enforce the rule he mocked. Because on Line 3, procedure isn't paperwork. It's the last thing standing between confidence and consequence. The next morning, I showed up early on purpose. Not because I wanted to get ahead, because when leadership starts treating controls like suggestions, the safest time to catch the first crack is before the noise starts. Line 3's tooling change was scheduled for mid-shift. That gave everyone enough time to talk themselves into shortcuts. I walked straight to the permit board. Everything looked normal at first. The laminated templates, the lockout tags, the binder with the confined space forms we rarely touched. I ran my finger along the magnet strip where our high-risk permits sat. And there it was, already staged. A maintenance entry for Line 3, guarded zone access to replace a feed sensor and adjust a pneumatic actuator bracket. Routine work, routine hazard. But it hit the exact category that had one non-negotiable rule. If you break the permit chain, the line stops. No meeting, no debate. I saw the names. Requester, Jace Marin. Supervisor approval, pending. Maintenance lead, Huxley Roan. Safety review, blank. Ops verification, blank. In other words, it wasn't valid yet. I took the magnet off the ready column and moved it back where it belonged. 10 minutes later, Jace showed up like he'd been waiting for it. He didn't say good morning, he said, "Why'd you move my permit?" "It's not approved," I answered, calm, factual. Jace's eyes flicked toward the floor as if he didn't want to be seen talking to me, which told me everything. He wasn't here because he cared about the work. He was here because someone was watching his numbers. "It's a sensor swap," he said. "Maintenance is in and out. We can't lose an hour on paperwork." "It's not paperwork," I said. "It's permission to put people inside a hazard zone." He exhaled hard. "You're still doing that thing where you talk like you're the only one who cares about safety." I didn't react to the jab. Get safety to sign. Get ops to verify. Then it goes in the ready column. Jace's jaw worked like he wanted to argue more, but he didn't. He walked away. For a moment, I thought it would stop there. It didn't. By noon, the floor felt different, not louder, not chaotic. Worse than that. Quiet in the way that means decisions are being made in side conversations. I caught operators glancing toward the office doors. I heard the word targets twice. I saw a whiteboard updated with a new metric, minutes lost to permits. That was when I knew Leor had gotten involved. Around 1, Mara texted me, "CEO wants a quick walkthrough on Line 3 before maintenance. Be present." The words were neutral. The meaning wasn't. I headed over and saw Leor coming down the aisle with 2 people I didn't recognize. Young, dressed like they'd never sweated through a shift in their lives. One of them carried a tablet like it was a weapon. Jace walked beside them, posture stiff, like a student hoping his teacher would finally be proud. Leor spotted me and smiled. Not friendly, performative. "Calder," he said. "Perfect timing. We're about to do a fast improvement." I didn't say anything yet. I just looked at the permit board behind him. He followed my eyes and waved a hand. Yeah, that. We're not doing the museum exhibit today. Huxley appeared from the maintenance cage, wiping his hands on a rag. He stopped when he saw Leor and froze for half a second. The way people do when they realize the next 10 minutes might decide the next 10 months. Leor clapped once. All right. Line 3 is behind. I want the sensor swap done now, and I want it done without the ops slowdown. Then he turned and looked straight at me like he was offering me a chance to be part of the new era. Calder, we're empowering the supervisors. Jace is accountable for this line. If he says it's safe, it's safe. Simple. I kept my voice level. That's not how guarded zone permits work. Leor's smile tightened. It is now. That sentence landed heavy, because it didn't matter if he believed it. The moment he said it, in front of Jace, in front of the analysts, in front of Mara, he was creating a social reality, a new rule made of status, and status doesn't stop machines. I looked at Mara. She didn't speak, but her eyes were locked on me like she was silently pleading, don't make this a scene, but don't let him do it. Huxley cleared his throat. We can do it, he said carefully, but we still need lockout and verification. That actuator's tied into the feed system. Leor nodded like he'd heard enough. Great. Do your lockout. Just don't stall the whole line while you fill out a novel. Then he gestured toward Jace. Jace stepped forward, and I watched him make the decision, not based on risk, based on approval. He reached toward the permit board and grabbed the magnet I'd moved earlier. He slapped it into the ready column like it was a declaration of power. And he said, loud enough for everyone nearby to hear, approved. We're doing it. I stared at that magnet. In our process, that move meant one thing, work authorized. Except it wasn't. No safety signature, no ops verification, no final lockout audit. Just ego, momentum, and a CEO who wanted to prove a point. I could feel my pulse in my throat, but my hands stayed steady, because I wasn't deciding whether to win an argument. I was deciding whether I was going to let a system get rewritten by humiliation. Leor leaned closer and lowered his voice, like he was offering me a private off-ramp. Don't be difficult, he said. Be a team player. You'll thank me later. I looked at him and said the only honest thing. If you start that work without a valid permit chain, I'm obligated to stop the line. He blinked once, surprised, like he hadn't expected me to say it out loud. Then he laughed, a short laugh, sharp. Obligated, he repeated. Calder, you're not a cop, you're ops. He turned to Mara like he wanted an audience for the punchline. See what I mean? This is the culture problem. The analyst smiled politely. Jace avoided my eyes. Huxley stared at the floor, and I realized something that made my stomach go cold. They weren't going to back down. Not because they thought they were right, but because backing down would mean admitting they weren't. And on a production floor, that's exactly how accidents happen. I watched Huxley's crew roll the tool cart toward the guarded zone. I watched Jace wave the operator forward to slow the feed. I watched Leor stand there with his arms folded like he was watching a show. And in my head, one sentence kept repeating, calm and clear. I didn't know it yet, but that decision would cost them everything. Because I wasn't going to yell. I wasn't going to plead. I was going to do the one thing I was trained to do. Enforce the rule. The one permit rule that didn't care who the CEO was. The cart rolled up to the guarded zone like nothing was wrong. That was the part that messed with me later. The normality of it. The same wheels squeaking. The same two techs joking under their breath. The same operator watching the feed like he'd done it 1,000 times. Only this time, the chain that made it safe was missing links on purpose. Huxley caught my eye as his crew reached for the gate. His face said, I don't like this either. But his hands moved anyway because in plants, the pressure doesn't come as a scream. It comes as a schedule. It comes as a boss standing 10 feet away with folded arms. Leor stayed right there, planted like a statue, enjoying the power of making people move. Jace stood beside him, shoulders tight. He was trying to look confident. He didn't look confident to me. He looked like a man forcing himself not to think. I walked to the permit board one last time and stared at the magnet sitting in the ready column. No safety sign-off. No ops verification. No final lockout audit. Just a supervisor's hand and a CEO's grin, I could have argued. I could have tried to shame them into slowing down. But I'd been doing this long enough to know if someone is willing to gamble with safety in public, they're not going to admit they're wrong in public. So I did the only thing left that didn't depend on their pride. I opened the plant's control procedure binder and flipped to the page we almost never used. Stop work authority. People think it's some dramatic hero clause. It isn't. It's a boring administrative rule, written in cold language by lawyers and safety engineers. It exists for one reason, so the plant doesn't have to ask permission to avoid getting someone hurt. It said, in plain terms, that if work starts in a guarded zone without a valid permit chain, any authorized person can call an immediate stop, not a pause, not a slowdown, a stop. I took a breath and keyed my radio. "Control room, this is ops," I said. My voice sounded steadier than I felt. "Confirm status on line 3. Preparing for stop work due to invalid permit chain." There was a short silence, and then the control room operator, Nessa Quill, came back. "Say again, ops." I kept it clean. "Guarded zone work initiated without valid safety and ops sign-off. Stop work authority. Stand by." My thumb hovered over the next call like it weighed 100 pounds, because I knew what would happen after. Not the line stopping. That part was easy. The part after. The confrontation. The careers. The way people would look at me like I'd just committed a crime instead of preventing one. Huxley's crew started undoing the gate latch. One tech stepped inside the boundary, tool bag swinging at his side, and in that instant something in me snapped. Not into anger, into clarity. That night, I stopped being the hero. Heroes try to save everyone's feelings. Ops keeps people alive. I keyed the radio again. "Nessa, execute stop work on line 3. Now." "Copy," she said, voice suddenly tight. I counted in my head without meaning to. 1 breath, 2. Then the line responded like a living thing being put to sleep. The feed slowed. The conveyor tension dropped. The pneumatic hiss faded. A warning horn chirped once, sharp and final. The indicator stack switched to stop condition. The whole line went still. It took less time than it takes someone to finish a sentence. 10 seconds, maybe less. And it didn't look dramatic. It looked like money evaporating. Jace's head snapped toward me. "What did you just do?" Lior turned slowly, like he couldn't process that the floor hadn't obeyed his presence. "What is this?" he asked, voice low, dangerous. "Who authorized that?" I walked closer, not fast, not slow, just steady. "I did," I said. "Stop work authority. The permit chain wasn't valid." Jace stepped forward like he was trying to block the words from reaching the CEO. "Calder, you can't just—" "I can," I cut in, still calm. "And I did. Because someone walked into the guarded zone under an invalid authorization." Lior's face flushed. "This is insubordination." "No," I said. "This is policy." He scoffed, like policy was something you used when you were weak. Mara appeared behind him, silent. Her eyes flicked from the stop line to the permit board to me. She looked like she'd been holding her breath for hours and didn't know whether to exhale. Lior pointed at the permit board. "Jace approved it." "Jace doesn't replace safety," I said. "And he doesn't replace ops verification, and neither do you." That last sentence made the air go brittle. For a second, the entire area went quiet. The kind of quiet you get when a room realizes the conversation is no longer professional. Huxley's tech, who'd stepped inside the boundary, backed out immediately, eyes wide. He wasn't offended. He was relieved. Because the tech knew what leaders pretend not to know. If something happens in that zone, it's his body that pays first. Lior took 1 step toward me. "You shut down our highest margin line over paperwork." I didn't raise my voice. I didn't match his step. It wasn't paperwork, I said. It was the control that proves the lockout is verified and the hazard is isolated. Without that, you're asking people to trust vibes. One of the analysts behind Lior whispered something I couldn't hear, probably about cost per minute, probably about optics. Lior ignored them. He turned his head slightly and spoke to Mara without taking his eyes off me. Get HR down here. Mara's jaw tightened. Lior! Now! He snapped. Then he looked back at me like he was about to crush me with a sentence. You're done, he said. Badge, radio, off the floor. I felt my stomach drop, but my hands stayed steady. Because the moment he said that, I understood the full shape of what had just happened. This wasn't about the line. This was about control. He couldn't allow the plant to see that a rule outranked him, and he especially couldn't allow it to be enforced by the one person he'd mocked in public. I reached into my pocket, pulled out my phone, and opened the photo I'd taken earlier that morning. Quietly, without drama. The permit board, close enough to read the missing sign-offs, time-stamped automatically. Then I opened a second photo. The permit magnet moved into ready, time-stamped too. Then I opened the third. The moment the line stopped, the indicator stack showing stop condition, with Lior in the background, mid-turn, face caught between confusion and rage. I didn't show him yet. I just looked at the stop line and realized something else, something colder. If he was willing to call HR over this, he was willing to rewrite the story. And if he rewrote the story, he wouldn't just come for my job. He'd come for the rule itself. I slipped the phone back into my pocket. I met Mara's eyes again, and I could tell she'd realized it too. Because she didn't look afraid of the shutdown anymore. She looked afraid of what Lior was about to do next. And then, over the radio, Nessa's voice cut through. Quiet, uncertain. Ops, we just got a remote request to clear the stop condition and resume line 3. A remote request, not from the control room, not from maintenance, from an executive credential. I didn't move. I didn't blink. And in that moment, I understood this wasn't a confrontation anymore. It was a test of whether our controls meant anything at all. Nessa's words hung in the air like a bad smell. Remote request to clear the stop condition. That wasn't normal. That wasn't even supposed to be possible without a chain of approvals, especially on line 3, where every stop meant someone had to physically verify the hazard zone. Lior didn't look surprised. He looked annoyed, like the system had been slow to obey him. He turned slightly, and one of his analysts, Pax Weller, tilted the tablet toward him. Pax's fingers were moving fast, like he'd rehearsed this part. Jace stared at the dead line with panic creeping into his face. He hadn't expected the empowerment speech to turn into a crisis he couldn't control. Huxley's crew stood still, tools in hand, waiting for instructions that felt suddenly dangerous. I keyed my radio. Nessa, don't clear anything. Hold the stop. Confirm the requester identity. There was a pause. I could hear typing through the line. Then, it's coming from an executive credential. It says, Kestrel L. My stomach tightened. Not because I was shocked he had access, because I knew what that access meant if he used it like this. In plants, there are two kinds of leaders, the ones who respect interlocks, and the ones who eventually get someone hurt. Lior finally spoke, voice smooth again like he was narrating a lesson. You see, he said, looking at me like I was a stubborn child. We don't need a floor revolt. We just need to remove friction. Then he nodded at Pax. Clear it. Mara stepped forward fast. Lior, no. You can't override a stop work on a guarded zone entry. Lior didn't even look at her. I can. And I am. And that was the moment the situation stopped being workplace drama and became something else. Because if he remotely cleared that stop while the crew was staged at the gate, the system would interpret the zone as safe and return the line to run-ready state. That's how you get motion where someone expects stillness. So I did the next step the way professionals do it. Clean, documented, no theatrics. I pulled out my phone again, not to threaten him, to record. I opened video and framed the permit board and the stop line in one shot, with Lior and Pax in the background. I wasn't hiding it. If anything, I wanted it visible. Lior noticed and smirked. Recording me? Cute. I didn't respond. I keyed my radio again. Nessa, put a hard administrative lock on the stop condition. Do not accept remote clears. Escalate to safety manager and plant director immediately. Nessa hesitated. Calder, that will require a supervisor code and... Use mine, I said. I'm authorizing the lock under stop work authority. Lior's face changed. His smile cracked. You don't have authority over my credentials, he snapped. I'm not touching your credentials, I said evenly. I'm locking the stop condition. That's plant safety protocol. Pax looked up from the tablet, eyes narrowing like he'd just realized the system wasn't as obedient as he thought. Mara's eyes widened, just slightly, because she knew what that lock meant. Now the only way to restart line 3 was the right way. Physical verification. Permit chain complete. Safety signature. No shortcuts. No ego. Lior's voice rose. You're costing us thousands per minute. And you're trying to restart a line during guarded zone prep, I said. That's not a cost issue. That's a liability issue. He stepped toward me again, and this time he was close enough that I could smell the expensive cologne under the factory air. You want to make me look weak? He said. I shook my head once. No. You did that yourself when you tried to bypass controls? His eyes flashed. Then he did exactly what I expected. He went for the story. He pointed at me and said loudly, so everyone within earshot could hear, this man shut down line 3 because he doesn't like change. He's sabotaging production. That word, sabotaging, wasn't an accident. It was a setup. Because safety dispute is messy. It raises questions. But sabotage is clean. It turns me into the villain and him into the victim, fighting for the company. And if he could sell that narrative, he could get rid of me and scare everyone else into silence. I didn't argue back. I just turned my phone screen toward Mara for a second. Only her. She saw the time-stamped permit board, the missing signatures. The line stopped, Lior in frame. She didn't flinch. She didn't smile. She just nodded once. A small nod. The kind that says, I see it. Keep going. HR arrived faster than I thought they would. 2 people in business casual who looked wildly out of place near line 3. The lead was Selah Brandt, our HR operations partner. I'd worked with her enough to know she wasn't stupid, but she also didn't like conflict with executives. Selah approached like she'd been called into a fire she didn't start. Calder, she said carefully, I'm being told you initiated an unauthorized shutdown. Lior spoke over her. He refused a direct instruction. He disrupted production. He recorded confidential operations. I want him escorted out. Selah looked at me, waiting for a reaction. I kept my voice controlled. The shutdown was authorized under stop work authority due to an invalid permit chain for guarded zone entry. Selah frowned slightly. Do you have documentation? Yes, I said. Photos and video, timestamps, and the permit board shows missing safety and ops sign-off. Lior scoffed. He's hiding behind forms. Mara finally stepped in. Her voice wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. Selah, Mara said, before anyone escorts anyone, I want safety on this line. Now! And I want the control room log showing the remote restart attempt. Pax's head snapped toward her. That's not necessary. It's necessary. Mara cut him off. There was a beat of silence, because Mara wasn't just a plant director. She was the one person on that floor who still had a chain of authorities that didn't depend on Lior's mood. Lior's eyes narrowed at her. Mara, don't undermine me. Mara stared back. I'm not undermining you. I'm protecting the plant. Then she looked at Selah. And if there was a remote attempt to clear a stop work during guarded zone prep, HR should know what that means. It means we're one mistake away from an incident. Selah's expression shifted, not into sympathy, into caution. Because HR doesn't care about throughput when the word incident starts floating. Safety arrived, Orrin Vale, our safety manager, moving fast, radio clipped high. Eyes already scanning the gate and the permit board. He didn't ask who was right. He asked one question, the only question that mattered. Was anyone inside the boundary when the stop was called? Huxley's tech shook his head immediately. I stepped in, but I backed out as soon as it stopped. No one was working inside. Orrin nodded once, then looked at the permit board. He saw the missing signatures. He saw the magnet in ready, and his face tightened. He turned to Jace. Who moved this to ready without safety sign-off? Jace opened his mouth, then closed it. His eyes flicked to Lior like he was begging for rescue. Lior stepped in, smooth again. I authorized it. We're simplifying process. Orrin didn't react emotionally. That's what made it worse for Lior. Orrin just said flat, You don't have that authority. Lior's jaw clenched. I'm the CEO. Orrin nodded once like he'd heard the title and filed it under irrelevant. And I'm the safety manager on the permit system. If you override stop work and permit controls, you're creating an unsafe condition and a compliance violation. Then Orrin looked at Selah. HR needs to document this as a safety escalation, immediately. Lior's face went red. Pax stopped touching the tablet. Jace looked like he might throw up. And then Nessa's voice came over the radio again, quieter, but with something new in it, fear mixed with certainty. Safety. Ops, I pulled the log. The remote restart attempt is recorded. It shows executive credential request, timestamped. That was the moment the floor shifted, because now it wasn't my word against a CEO's ego. It was the system, and the system doesn't care who signs paychecks. In ops, you learn a hard truth. Power argues, but logs don't. If someone tries to rewrite safety in real time, you don't out-yell them. You freeze the system, preserve the evidence, and force the truth to enter the room on paper. Lior stood there, breathing hard, looking around as if the plant itself had betrayed him. He'd tried to make me the villain. Instead, he'd put his own name into a control room log, doing the one thing executives are never supposed to do, turning safety into a shortcut. And I knew, standing beside that deadline 3, that the next fight wouldn't be on the floor. It would be in a conference room, where minutes cost less than reputations, and where one little permit rule could end more than a shift. It could end a career. By the time we left the floor, line 3 was still down. Not because anyone refused to work, because safety had taken control of the restart process. And once safety takes control, nobody gets to freestyle. Orrin posted the line as stop work hold and physically tagged the gate. Huxley's crew rolled the cart back and stood down. Operators drifted to the side, whispering the way people do when they've just watched authority lose a round. Lior didn't say a word on the walk to the conference room, but he didn't need to. His whole posture screamed one thing, I'm gonna make this hurt you. Mara walked with us, calm and straight-backed. Selah from HR kept glancing between Lior and me, like she was doing mental math on who she could safely disappoint. Pax stayed close to Lior, tablet clutched to his chest, eyes locked forward. Jace didn't come. He'd been told to stay on the floor and support restart readiness, which was the kind of sentence companies use when they don't know yet they're about to blame. In the conference room, Mara shut the door and didn't sit. She looked at Selah first. I want this logged as a safety escalation with potential compliance breach, she said. We're not doing a personality meeting. Lior finally spoke, voice controlled but sharp. This is absurd. Calder acted out. He shut down our most profitable line and recorded internal operations. He needs to be terminated today. Selah's mouth opened, then closed. She looked at Mara, then at Orrin, then at me. Orrin didn't let it turn into drama. He slid a printed sheet across the table. Control room log, extracts Nessa had pulled. Timestamp, credential ID, action attempted, clear stop condition. Requester, Kestrel L. Then he placed a second sheet beside it, the permit checklist for guarded zone entry. 2 required sign-offs missing. Safety, ops verification. Oren spoke like a man describing the weather. Stop work was valid. Permit chain was invalid. Remote restart attempt during guarded zone prep is a violation of the permit control model. Lior leaned back, smile gone. He stared at the paper like he thought it could be argued into changing. "You're telling me I can't restart my own line," he said. Oren held his gaze. "I'm telling you the system is built, so nobody can restart it under unsafe conditions. That includes you." Mara added, quiet but deadly, "And it includes anyone using your credential." Pax shifted in his chair. Just a small movement, but I noticed it. Because for the first time, I saw the crack. Lior wasn't just angry at the rule, he was looking for an exit, a story where he didn't personally touch the controls. Selah cleared her throat. "We need to determine intent and process." "But," Lior cut her off, "intent is irrelevant. Results matter. He cost us money." I finally spoke again, slow and deliberate. "Line 3 wasn't shut down by my feelings," I said. "It was shut down by a broken permit chain. If we let that slide because a title got offended, we're teaching the whole plant that safety is optional." Lior's eyes narrowed. "You're lecturing me now." "No," I said. "I'm documenting what happened." That landed, because he realized something. I wasn't trying to win him over. I was building a record. Mara turned to Selah. "I want IT security to pull access rights for executive credentials on control actions. Today, we don't have executives clearing interlocks from a tablet." Selah hesitated. "That's a significant change." Mara didn't blink. "So is an incident." Oren slid my phone video request into the conversation without emotion. Calder has time-stamped photo and video of the permit board and the shutdown context. I recommend we archive it with the safety file. Selah nodded slowly. "We can do that." Lior's jaw tightened. He tried a different angle. "Then we discipline him for recording." I answered before Mara could. "I recorded the permit board and line status indicators. No proprietary schematics, no customer data. It's evidence of missing sign-offs and the stop condition." Oren nodded once, backing me without sentiment. "That's standard in safety escalations." Lior's eyes flicked to Pax again. That's when it happened. Pax spoke for the first time, voice careful. "There's something else." Everyone looked at him. Pax swallowed. "The remote restart request didn't come from the CEO console. It came from a mobile session." Lior's head snapped toward him. "What are you saying?" Pax looked at the table instead of at Lior. "It means it wasn't a deliberate control room action. It was an attempt from the tablet." Mara's voice went icy. "Whose hands were on the tablet?" Pax didn't answer immediately, and that silence told the truth better than any confession. Lior's face shifted, not into guilt, into calculation. He turned to Selah. "This is exactly why ops shouldn't have access. We need to tighten permissions and remove the people who resist modernization." Mara didn't take the bait. She pushed the conversation where it belonged. "Permissions will be tightened," she said, "starting with executive credentials, and we're opening an internal review." Lior laughed, but it sounded strained. "A review? Because of one shutdown?" Oren leaned forward slightly. "Because of an attempted restart under unsafe conditions, yes." Selah finally found her footing. "This will go to legal and the board risk committee." "That's standard." The word board changed the oxygen in the room. Lior went still. I watched it happen in real time. The moment he realized this wasn't an argument he could win by volume. He couldn't fire the permit system. He couldn't intimidate a control room log. And he definitely couldn't bully the board risk committee. He stood abruptly. "Fine. Do your review." Then he looked at me with cold promise. "But if you think you're untouchable, you're wrong." I didn't respond. Because I wasn't untouchable. I was just documented. 2 days later, the findings hit like a quiet bomb. IT security confirmed the executive credential had control privileges it never should have had. The board didn't like that. Investors don't like systems where one impulsive decision can create a liability event. The review also uncovered something Lior hadn't planned for. He'd been pushing supervisors to remove friction in other areas too, skipping minor checks, compressing maintenance windows, pressuring teams to backdate sign-offs. Not enough to make headlines, enough to make a pattern. Jace received a formal corrective action and was removed from Line 3 supervision until retraining. He didn't fight it. He looked relieved. Pax was reassigned away from operations systems entirely. Officially, it was role alignment. Unofficially, it was the company removing a hand from a lever that should never have been there. And Lior? He didn't get marched out in handcuffs. Real life isn't like that. What happened was cleaner. The board announced an operational governance restructure. Mara was elevated in authority on plant controls. Safety got direct escalation rights to the board risk chair. Lior kept his title, but he lost the ability to treat the plant like a stage. Because when the board sees risk, they don't care about charisma. They care about exposure. And the fastest way to reduce exposure is to put the controls back in the hands of people who respect them. Line 3 restarted the right way. Permit chain complete. Lockout verified. Safety signed. Ops verified. And when the conveyor moved again, nobody cheered. They just worked. That's how you know a plant is healthy. It doesn't run on motivation, it runs on discipline. A week later, Mara pulled me aside near the permit board. "You did the right thing," she said, "and you did it the right way." I nodded. I didn't want to shut it down. "I know," she said, "but you were the only one willing to accept being hated for 10 minutes to keep someone from being hurt for life." Then she handed me a printed memo. Formal recognition. Stop work authority enforcement. Process integrity. Not a trophy. A shield. Because it meant the company had officially recorded what Lior tried to turn into sabotage. A safety intervention. And that meant if he ever tried to come for my job again, he'd have to do it while stepping over his own log trail. When I drove home that night, I didn't feel victorious. I felt settled. Because revenge wasn't the line stopping. Revenge was watching a young CEO learn the one lesson plants teach, with no mercy. You can bully people. You can't bully physics. And if you try to bully procedure eventually writes your name down, date and time included. Then it never forgets.